Villains. Dark, menacing, mysterious. Or maybe a better description of them would be forgettable, cliché, and laughable. And if we're being completely honest, the latter option is probably the more accurate description, as that's how most villains these days are shaping up. I don't know about you, but I like villains who make me feel more emotions than this annoyance and mild amusement. I like villains that make me feel the amount of fear and revulsion that gets me on my knees begging the author for a happy ending. And as a writer who enjoys reading about these types of villains, then yes, it's correct to assume that I want to write these types of villains in my own stories. And if you yourself have tried writing these types of terrifying villains in your own novels, then it's also probably correct of me to assume that you had quite the ordeal doing so. Because it's a lot easier imagining a terrifying villain in your head than actually conveying that terrifying villain through sentences and words and paragraphs. Your supposedly frightening villain is about as threatening as like a koala bear baking muffins. So how exactly do you create and write a horrifying villain to the reader? What exactly makes a terrifying character? How do you execute that character through the pages of your novel? Well, in today's video, I'm going to be showing you 14 different characteristics that, when applied to your villain, instantly makes them so much more menacing. When I talk about villain here, I'm usually meaning it as like an antagonist, anyone directly opposing the hero and his goal. So yeah, this could be a dark overlord, but it could also be like a family member, a roommate, or even a good friend of the hero. Some of these points work awesome for some villains in some stories and not as well for other stories, so I recommend picking and choosing the ones that fit best for your villain in your story and kind of what kind of villain do you want to create, and choosing the attributes that you want your villain to have and applying it to them. Or if you have many villains in your stories, this can be great to spread them out between all those different types of villains. So without further ado, let's head into the 14 characteristics of a terrifying villain. Number 1, they wear all black and talk in a scary, sorry, wrong script. Number 1, they are unpredictable. The times we feel most scared and vulnerable are the times when we have no idea what's gonna happen next. We have no idea what the situation may hold or have no idea what the person may do. It's so much scary searching an abandoned house. We have no idea what's around the corner. Or maybe what makes the villain unpredictable is that they're a master at disguises. So the hero never knows if that man walking his dog down the street or the over-talkative cashier will suddenly pull a gun on them. Or maybe partly through the novel, when the hero corners the villain suddenly seems pitiful and full of repent and says he can help the hero get what he so desperately needs. So then the hero has mercy on the villain and they make a deal, but then just when the hero needs the villain most, the villain betrays him, and that's kind of what makes them shifty and unpredictable. This shock and unpredictability, even in the small things, can add another layer of fear. So how you can use this in your own novels is, what is the hero's first impression of the villain? How does the hero think the villain usually acts? What is something you'd never expect the villain would do? Whether that be their method of action, how they present themselves, their motives, or who or what they are working for. How can you switch up and subvert these expectations and impressions in a shocking and terrifying way? Number 2, they have no limits. Why this is so terrifying is that you can't rest assured that there aren't certain monstrous things that the villain won't do because of certain restrictions, whether that be a fear, the little conscience he has, or a weakness. With no limitations, anything is possible. He'd kill any person, take anything, destroy every city without hesitation if that thing brought them closer to what they wanted. For example, maybe your villain kills the only person they've ever loved to get closer to their goal. Or maybe your villain easily sacrifices unknowing, loyal, and trusting followers that thought the villain had their back and best interests at heart. Or maybe the villain tricks innocent people to carry out his terrible deeds. Here's how you can apply this. What are some shocking things that demonstrate that your villain has no limits? How is this connected to the hero? And how does the hero react? Number 3, they are a ticking time bomb. Making your villain a ticking time bomb adds suspense and dread. It makes the hero feel like he only has a certain amount of time before he's doomed. Setting a countdown timer on it will make it far more suspenseful and terrifying. The same goes for villains, whether it's the villain finding out something or doing something horrendous or betraying the hero. Setting a countdown timer on it will make it far more suspenseful and terrifying. For example, say your hero has a secret identity and his friend is the actual villain of your story and he's trying to track down the hero's true identity. And it's only a matter of time before the villain finds out who he truly is and their friendship will be completely and utterly destroyed. Maybe your villain sends death threats to a handful of minor characters and he slowly one by one picks them off. Maybe your reader knows who the villain is, but the hero doesn't know who the villain is, and the villain pretends to be on the hero's side. The reader will know it's only a matter of time before the villain betrays the hero. Quick warning, make sure you actually do follow through with everything you set up. Otherwise, it will feel extremely anticlimactic, and it'll feel like you cheated your audience. That's why the ticking time bombs of the villain's gonna take over the world or the villain's going to kill the main character are extremely unconvincing time bombs. No one's gonna believe them, thus no one's going to dread them. So instead, make the time bomb something that's actually plausible, something that could realistically happen in your story. Even better, actually make that happen. Make the bomb go off. Not only will this show how powerful and terrifying your villain is, it will also create a keystone plot event in your novel that will really shake things up and grip your readers. How you can apply this is, what is some inevitable event or action that you can make the reader dread? What are the terrible events that result from it? How does the villain get closer and closer to that particular dreaded event? How does this increase the stakes and the suspense? When the event does happen, how is it worse than the main character ever imagined? Number 4, the villain hurts the hero in a way that no one has ever done before. This shows that the villain isn't some ordinary mean person. They're different, and they're out to hurt the hero in the worst way possible. Your hero sadly has probably been hurt many times before the story has even started. Same old mean comments and actions probably still hurt, but they're familiar. He's felt this pain before. The villain hurts the hero in a way he's never been hurt before. It's a different kind of pain. It's way more scarring and distressing. It establishes that the villain is different, far more terrible and horrifying than anybody the hero has ever encountered before. For example, maybe your hero's rock and support is his close friends, but the villain turns his own very friends against the hero. Maybe your hero's dream is to become a police officer, but the villain tricks or forces him to do something illegal. This then makes the hero a felon, thus meaning he can never pursue his dream of becoming a police officer. Here's how you can apply this. What does the hero genuinely care about? What does the hero genuinely value? How does the villain use this to hurt the hero in a way no one has ever before? How does this knock the hero to his knees? Number 5, they have a driving motivation and will stop at nothing. When the villain has a strong and personal motivation to why they're pursuing this goal, then you almost can't imagine a world where they are not pursuing this goal. They can't not have this unshakable determination to achieve this goal that they so desperately want. When your villain doesn't have a strong motivation to why they're pursuing their goal, then it seems less important to the villain, thus less likely to go to great and terrible lengths to get there. For example, maybe your villain's motivation is to find their missing family that's been missing for many years. Maybe your villain's motivation is to end their exile and be accepted back into their home country. Maybe your villain's motivation is to ensure that their criminal son lives a normal and happy life. Here's how you can apply this. What does the villain want? How much have they sacrificed to get what they want? How far are they willing to go to get what they want? Number 6, they have different faces. This adds layers and depth to your villain. It hints that they are cunning and also makes them that much more hateable. Perhaps your villain is a bully who acts like a model student in front of the teachers, all sweet and nice to his girlfriend, but then goes and beats up the main character and other students. Perhaps your villain is a hardworking and respected general, but in reality is going half mad at trying to find one of the spies in his army that is sabotaging the city. So he acts all honorable and caring in front of the higher-ups, but then to his own soldiers, including the main character, he's crazy and cruel and treats them terribly. What are some different attitudes and masks that the villain uses around different people? How does the villain act differently around the hero than other people? Number 7, they have admirers. Think about Hitler or any other infamous villain or cult leader in history. One of the things that makes them so terrifying is that they manage to bring a large group of people onto their side. It shows that the villain has leadership skills and that they're fighting for a cause that a lot of people believe in. It shows that they are powerful and that they have a talent for bringing a large amount of people under their grip. Your reader most likely won't take the villain seriously if they have a one-man army and can't get anyone to join their cause, or if they have a group of henchmen who never listen to what they say. And it doesn't even have to be that big of a group of people. You know, it could just be 10 or so people that the villain met in a plaza somewhere, or maybe like the villain has a fan club consisting of like 2 or 3 people. Or maybe it's just their parents, like, who knows? Bottom line is, give the villain people who respect and admire them. Maybe your villain is part of an underground Robin Hood type group who steals from the rich and gives to the poor, and has a large following because they've suffered from the society where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and they strongly believe that this is the only way they can solve that problem. So ask yourself, who respects and admires the villain? How does the villain use this to their advantage? Number 8, they bend people to their will. What can possibly be more terrifying than a villain who slowly brings the good characters over onto the dark side? Maybe one of the characters in your story is struggling financially and they need money so desperately for them and their family. And then the villain offers lots of money and a comfortable life to him and his family if he comes over to the villain's side and works for him. Maybe the villain convinces many characters that being on the hero's side only results in failure and death. They'll be much better off and happier on the villain's side. So ask yourself, how does a villain bend people to their will? What are the lies the villain tells them? Do they bring anyone that the hero cares about to their side? Number 9, they are non-reactive. You just can't take a villain who throws tantrums all the time seriously. The villains who are terrifying and exude power are the ones who remain calm during high-pressure situations. The ones who remain calm even when their plans fail. It makes the reader wonder, do they have something else up their sleeves? And if something this big didn't affect them, what on earth would? Perhaps the hero storms the evil prince's palace and points an arrow at him, ready to assassinate him. Even though the prince is seemingly about to die, it still feels like he has control over the situation. Maybe the villain's right-hand man gets captured by the good guys, but instead of this hindering the villain and his plans, he uses this to his advantage. He uses it as a way to infiltrate the good guy's fortress. So ask yourself, does your villain remain calm? Does your villain remain non-reactive in high-pressure situations? And why? Does he have a backup plan? Number 10, they have no conscience, they delight in evil. When your villain has gone so far to have no conscience, there's no hope that he will ever turn away from his evil deeds. He's too far gone. Doing evil things is easy for them. It's normal. They feel no remorse, no regret, and in fact enjoy it. There are 2 types of villains. The first type of villain is the villain who thinks they are the hero. Like say the villain who is a politician who thinks what he's doing is for the greater good of the country, but deep down he's just doing this for money and power. The villain who says that they're fighting for justice, but deep down they've really done barbaric deeds that don't even qualify as justice anymore. The people who believe that the ends is greater than the means, but deep down, they're really just doing this out of selfishness. These are kind of villains that can be redeemed, are sympathetic, or just understandable in some way. But then there's the second types of villains. The villains who, at this point, have gone so far down this dark path, have sunk so deep into lies, that they can't even bring themselves to feel bad for what they did. This is why psychopathic villains are so popular. But what's a more interesting villain is a villain who used to be a decent person, but after making wrong decisions over and over and time again, they had to block out their conscience in order to cope. Anyone can end up this way if they run away from God and listen to Satan's lies just enough. And if you pull this off well, you can end up with a truly terrifying villain. For example, maybe your villain danced together after killing the main character's loved one. Villains who go get ice cream after a night of murder. A villain who buries their victim alive, then goes out to dinner with their friends. So ask yourself, which type of villain is your villain? Are they so far down the path of darkness that they delight in evil and pretty much has no conscience whatsoever? What kind of decisions have they made and lies that they believed up to this point that made them this way? Number 11, the villain turns what the protagonist loves against them. The protagonist's love becomes their torture. It's so sick and twisted, and it just shows how evil your villain is. For example, is in the Hunger Games. Spoiler warning for the third Hunger Games book, so skip ahead about a minute if you don't want spoilers for the third book. When Peeta gets captured by the Capitol, President Snow turns Peeta into a mutt programmed to kill Katniss. So Katniss's lover is now out to kill her. It's both terrible for Peeta and Katniss. Or maybe in the beginning of the story, your hero loves this particular song. It's their jam, they love it. But then the villain finds this out and uses this for their dark twistedness, and they play this song whenever they capture another one of the hero's loved ones. So whenever the hero hears a song, they know another one of their loved ones are gone. So ask yourself, what does a hero love? A person, hobby, a particular activity? And how does a villain twist this against them? Number 12, they're hypocritical. Everybody hates hypocrites. This is something so irritating about somebody who condemns somebody for doing something, but then the next minute, they're out doing that very same thing. Maybe the hero mocks the hero for a mistake that the villain himself made in the past. So ask yourself, what is a mistake that the hero made in your story? Has your villain ever made a similar mistake? If so, how does your villain scrutinize or mock the hero for the same mistake they have made? Number 13, they succeed many times. Too often we see villains who are weak, who get defeated several times in the first few chapters or several times in like the first movie. Or say maybe your villain is on the run and the villain is chasing them. Over and over, the villain gets so close to capturing the hero, but they fail to do it every single time, to the point where you're convinced that the hero will never be caught by these useless, unthreatening, and weak people. And you're right, the only time the hero does get captured is when they let themselves get captured because like they have a plan up their sleeves or something like that. But consider what would happen if your villain did succeed. The villain did succeed in framing the hero. What if he also succeeds in destroying all the name-clearing evidence that the hero worked so desperately hard to find? What if he succeeds in killing the only witness that could clear the hero's name? Not only would this be incredibly frustrating, making us hate the villain all the more, but we also care so much more about the hero. We have so much more sympathy for the hero, and we cheer all the more for him so that they can finally win and defeat this terrible villain. We'll begin to actually care about the story. And then when the hero finally does succeed, it will be extremely cathartic. All the suspense and plot points that get built up throughout the entire story finally gets paid off in a satisfying and cathartic way. And finally, the most important reason why you want to make your villain strong is that it forces your hero to be strong. The more the villain outmatches the hero, the more the hero has to struggle and grow. And those are the kind of stories people love to read. Stories about strong characters and their growth gives readers hope and inspiration and holds them to a higher standard and encourages them to be better people. So ask yourself, what are some ways you can let your villain succeed? How does this demonstrate particular skills that the villain has? Power, strength, cunning, foresight, etc. Number 14, they make the hero doubt themselves and their beliefs. Whisper lies to the main character, sending them down a wrong path morally. This adds to your theme and also fleshes out the messages you want to cover in your story. It also adds growth to your main character. The hero desperately wants to save people during an apocalyptic outbreak, but the villain tells him that he's weak and useless and will only worsen the situation if he tries to help people. So ask yourself, what are some truths your hero believes or has come to believe over the course of your story? What are some doubts that the hero might still have? How does this add to your theme? How does this add to the conflict? What are some moral lies that the villain tells the hero? What consequences result from the hero perhaps believing those lies? So those are the 14 things that you can add to your villains to make them more powerful, dark, and menacing. Today's common question is, what do you think is one of the most terrifying villains you've ever read or watched? And what do you think made them so terrifying? Thank you so very much for watching. Take heart, be courageous, and keep on writing. See ya.